I'm a bit like the court wizard, like I have to just stand around and wait for them to say, "Excuse me, Mr. Wizard, what spell will work on this frog?" Well,
So, thank you for being here. You're the second person I'm speaking to, and you're not even a dev.
no. Well, I was a dev
Well,
like
yeah.
years ago, but I kind of moved away from it, if that makes sense. It just wasn't
Why?
for me. It's too hard.
In what sense?
Simple answer.
Okay.
It's too hard.
What do you find hard about it? Is the actual work, the hours, the people?
It's probably the relentless learning curve, meaning that kind of so you learn something, but then a new technology comes out that immediately replaces what you've been working on before. And when you've kind of got ADHD like I have, that's a nightmare. So because you're either in deep focus study, but then you want the reward of actually practicing what you've learned, and you start to practice it, and then you speak to another developer, and they go, "What? You're not using this framework?" And you're just like, "Oh
Yeah.
no."
No,
So
I can
that's
definitely relate with that. So, what do you do now?
I'm a product designer, so I work for the ROC. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're a breakdown company in the UK.
Mhm.
So I design, well, all the breakdown journey basically. Product design is a really difficult thing to explain what it is. So without you asking me what is a product designer, I'm going to answer that question.
Go for it.
So like a UX designer, right,
Hmm.
is a really really skilled like digital designer effectively that does can architect like websites and applications, that kind of thing, but their mantra is always to kind of put the user first, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. So a UX designer will often work with a user researcher and a UI designer. The UI designer will do the front end, the visual aspect. The UX designer will do all the strategic content strategy, site mapping, user journeys, all that stuff. And the user researcher will go and you know work out who the audience is, get the right people in to facilitate and test the prototype, so you can learn whether or not what's been built and works. Right. Probably for the last 10 years or so, when I've been practicing UX design, I've always had to almost prove the value of what I'm doing almost every stage of the just every day at work with the
Hmm.
clients. The product design does the same thing that UX design does, but the allegiance is to the objectives of the company. How can we deliver this thing so that we can increase our revenue in a non-shit way where we don't do our users over? That would be a good way of kind of putting it. Makes sense. So I mean, the user is still important,
Hmm.
super, because if the user isn't comfortable with the idea that you're trying to sell, then you're not going to make any money. There's just more like business nuance around it. You tend to end up with quite senior people in these roles, and they tend to be a UI designer, a UX designer, and a user researcher all combined in one person. It's a very demanding role. It's very fast paced, and there's a lot of different varieties. So you have to learn to not take things personally, and you have to understand that sometimes the process will just get screwed up into a ball and thrown into the corner. You need to have the composure to deal with those situations and be able to react and trust your experience and your instincts to navigate you through it. There's a lot more testing though, which is good. You have to test these things because we're going to throw money at this, so it's like we need to know that the return on the investment is there, and that the need from the customer is also there as well. It's all about customer need and they're fulfilling it. That's what I do.
Yeah, because that was my other question, and I know we kind of started going off the deep end already, but I really like it. Is a UX designer still a part of a product team, or is it completely?
No, no, just not there at all. It's not a requirement because the like I said, I fulfill that role.
Product development is also a different discipline in a sense, but it's not that a developer out of an agency or an in-house team cannot do product development. It's more that you either go into like a startup and you need to be the sort of person who can lay the groundwork quickly and just move, push it, and just release something. But then there's also the whole thing about learning how to navigate the politics of it and making sure that whatever you're building can be built upon in whatever many years time, because you don't really get the option, okay, let's rewrite everything. You're kind of stuck with your code base.
A lot of developers who work agency side, when they come product side, they really shine. And they shine because all of a sudden they can finish their work. But what I would say though is that the kind of like the deep expertise of the developers product side, there's so much more depth to their knowledge than the ones working agency side. So, but it's push and pull. Like the agency devs have got so much more resilience than the client side product tech company devs, and because they're working with no budgets, with people that don't understand, generally what they're doing, not through any fault of their own.
They don't have
And
to.
don't have to. So whereas with the product side, you've got more support. So you've got your scrum master or your product manager, but then you've got your principal in your team as well, a principal for each team. And then you've got, your seniors, your middleweights, and then like your associate, I think is the term now for junior. But associate.
Yeah.
But there's that clear hierarchical structure contained within the squad, so it's very well balanced. There's a lot of freedom of movement, really, actually, in terms of what you can do, because once your objectives have been given at the beginning of the beginning of the sprint, sorry, you pretty much left your own devices to work out how you're going to get to the other end. So there's a chaos in the structure that works. And I think devs need that a little bit, actually.
And it's really interesting for the product side as well, because I think also product to product changes quite a lot, because I've worked for a product that was essentially a platform that we sold marketing and news and promotions. But at the same time, I also worked for a SaaS product and some other stuff. And it was quite crazy because I think what you described with the support structure and a bit more robustness of the system, it was way more obvious in the more traditional company that it was. We have all our product teams. It's handles specific product, domain expertise, blah blah blah. And then in the SaaS, it was just like all hands on deck, build whatever you can. And to me, it was crazy because in many ways it felt crazier than an agency.
It's mental. SaaS is absolutely mental. I've worked for a SaaS company as well, and once you find your rhythm, it's good. But the first 6 weeks while you're finding your feet, you're just like walking on fire. It's very stressful.
So how did you end up being a product designer? What choices did you make?
So I started actually as I've got that typical kind of like normal garage story, of like how I was at school and I was building websites in Dreamweaver, writing HTML, and there was no CSS back then, so it was all inline styling and tables, and it was a beautiful time. Frames, Macromedia Flash, it was all on the table, and I started designing, building websites, messing around in Photoshop, and then I just stopped and I went to college, and I was going to learn how to become a front-end developer, and I got there, and they handed me the sheet, and they were like, "You need these qualifications to get on this course." And I looked down, and I'd got none of these qualifications, not a single one. And they're like, "It's okay, you can go do your GCSEs again and do it at the same time." And I looked at my mum and I went, "I'm not doing GCSEs again, mum. I hated them." And then I like went over to the art college, and off we go. So kind of like fast forward, kind of like 10 years or whatever. I started out working for like a branding agency. I used to do like logos and like visual identities and like retail graphics, that kind of stuff, posters, anything, graphic design, visual communication related. But I hated it. Absolutely, I was good at it, but I hated it. Every second of every day that I was doing that job, I hated it. So, and then I managed to get a job working for like this, like really, really loose startup company, and when I was there, I was designing, but then building websites with like CSS2 was out then. But then CSS3 came out with HTML5, and it was really cool. You could do like ease in and out effects on buttons and rounded corners and all sorts of goodness. It was a great time. It was like it was fashionable then to design in browser. That didn't hang around for long, that concept. But
I've never even heard of it.
yeah, it's probably from before you even started to work. That's why it's just nonsense. But yeah, then just kind of like flipped around like loads of agencies, kind of like in Leicester, Derby, Nottingham, and just kind of worked my way up from, kind of like a small to medium sized design agency through to, like a design agency where if you say the name of the agency to another designer, they go, "What? You work there?" So I used to care a lot about that kind of stuff back then, because when you become a designer, you have like a dream, like an idea of like what you're going to be doing, but yeah, then I kind of got a job at a large agency. I was working for decent clients, like lots of fast food and sports clients, and then I got headhunted by a bigger agency who I then went and worked for even cooler fast food and even bigger sports clients. So, I'm just gonna like cut like a huge part of the story out here and just say that, I went and did that. I kind of had a job interview just on off the cuff with this guy called Billy. And the moment I spoke to this guy, he was talking to me. I didn't understand a fucking word he was saying, not a word. And I knew straight away. I was like, I need to work for this guy. So I said to him, I said, I'll work for you. I want to work for you. He offered me the job there and then, and that's when I became a product designer.
But I want to say that, like you said, when you work, especially with a product owner that actually cares and knows what they do and they have a vision and a drive, it's so much more different. I'm not going to name names, but essentially, when I was working with this German publisher, the product owner was amazing. He knew everything about the domain. He wanted to push forward. He wanted to do better. And then I work with other product owners that essentially they were just there to run through a Jira board, and it's like, I have nothing to give you, dude. Like, yeah, whatever, do your thing.
They're not all created equal. But we get back into the world of project manager bashing in the end, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's lead, isn't it, to how useless the project managers are. But
it's not even that, because product owner and project manager, I know a lot of terrible companies combine them, but they couldn't be any different.
I've only worked with one. Do you remember Glenn?
Yeah.
Like he's a product owner. He's not a project manager. Like he's a product owner. There's a difference, you feel that little extra something, when, because they give you more, like they give you some strategy, they give you a roadmap, they check your work, they have an idea, but they don't execute it. They talk to you about it and then execute it, kind of like don't cut corners, because, ultimately your KPIs, like your product owner and your product designer, they should be the same. When I write my KPIs, I send them to my product owner and we like mark each other's work and we send it back and forth.
I'm going to move it a bit back towards developers. As a non-developer anymore, do you have any stories about working with developers that stood out to you throughout the years?
Yeah, of course. I got loads of them.
Oh, cool. Can we hear some?
Yeah, so I've had developers storm out on me, like calling me an idiot and swearing, like saying I don't know what I'm doing. What do you mean I don't know what I'm doing? Because I'm looking at this. It's all very buildable. Some developers, they don't like the fact that they're copying someone else's work and bringing it to life. They want to be the architect of that work, but they don't have the vision, the strategic knowledge, they've got no idea what's actually going on, if that makes sense, beyond this narrow field of view. The good developers, like the really, really good ones, they'll just ask loads of questions and they'll just be interested. Disinterested developers are dangerous. Just a few years ago, I was working on one project and there was a developer who was ghosting in the team and he wasn't doing any work at all. He was like a submarine in the team. like 4 months, he just did nothing. And then one day I asked him, I said, "Hey, dude, where are we with this?" And he was like, "Ah." And then a couple of weeks later, I just found out that he was gone. It's like an email came through. It was like, he's no longer with us.
And was that during COVID?
No,
No.
no, that was long after COVID.
Okay. I was just curious because I've heard both sides of the stories. You know, developers getting 5 different remote jobs and pretty much ghosting everyone until they get fired. And on the other hand, you know, developers just going really hard into it, 18-hour days, just because they hyper focus.
Do you know I've worked with a designer who did this,
Hmm.
who did the multi-job thing, and I'll just say and just not go into any detail, but there was almost no remorse from the individual at all. Like they just literally just denied it and denied it and denied it and denied it until they were fired and then admitted it.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely get it to an extent because you could work a job European times, a job American times, if you really want to push for it. But then again, just be honest, do your paperwork and just be clear.
Like back in the old days, probably I would say probably like 2010 to 2015. I used to work all day and work all night for my own clients, but I had to though because my employer paid me peanuts. Like I didn't. My back then. I started off on a salary that was £12,000.
Wow.
And then after a year, I got promotion to £15,000. So I was still on £15,000 after 2.5 years. It took me until 2014 to actually get to 23,000, which just goes to show how much inflation there has been in the UK market over the last kind of 10 years, because I, I, I don't know when it happened, but I think about 2019, 2020, like, a 20 grand salary just became 40. I don't know when that happened though. But what I do know though is that caused a huge shift in the job market, because all the people that were in their jobs and they saw these new jobs going out, these new salaries, they all quit their jobs and got new jobs. Do you know what I mean? I've seen this happen so many times where you've been working as a senior somewhere and then a middleweight gets hired and he's earning more than the senior.
Really interesting with the salaries because Glenn was talking about this as well.
Mm.
How he was looking for jobs and essentially for senior developers, it's around the 35,000 mark,
Yeah.
and that's all. And I don't know how livable it is now because I haven't lived in the UK for a while, but it doesn't feel right.
It's not a livable amount of money.
Yeah.
Look, dude, when I was managing teams, right, the number one complaint I'd get from everyone in my team is that I'm not earning enough money, right?
Hmm.
So I would then have to go to my boss and say, look, people in my team are struggling. I need to give them more money. And he'd go, no. Then you go back to your team and you tell them the bad news and they hate you. I would say the agency salary structure within the UK at the moment, in terms of how much, I think it applies to both developers and designers because they're on very similar pay scale to web designers anyway.
On my first role, I was earning 17,000 as a junior developer, and
Yeah.
18,000 when I was no longer a junior after a year and a half. And then on my second job, I was earning 19,000, and it took me about a year and a half to go over 20. And the only reason that I got to 24, which was not great still, it was because I kind of bullied my way up there.
Yeah.
And I knew that for, okay, this could sound wrong, but for an unskilled marketing person, like literally just walking through the door, their starting salary was between 21 and 24.
Yeah.
And I found completely bullshit. Mm-hmm.
What that means is that there isn't a cultural acceptance of the value that the development team can bring to the table. There's a familiarity on the other side. So they've got all these disciplines over here that they know what to do with. And then they've got the developers over here, and they're like an unknown quantity.
An agency probably sees the dev department as a cost center rather than a profit center. which also completely explains why they don't want to sell or invest more into it. It's just a necessary evil.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to sell websites drawn on napkins to your clients, then yeah, you can
Yeah.
take that point of view. But if you actually want to deliver a website, then maybe you should actually change the way that you think about that, because that kind of outdated thinking has got no place in the future of IT, frankly.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad, honestly, because for most companies paying around 10,000 for their website, uh, they had no reason to pay 10,000. Like Squarespace was more than enough for them, and I'm not even sponsored by them.
There is no reason.
Let's get
Mar-
controversial.
Marketing companies, right? You need
Yeah.
to watch out, because there is no reason whatsoever. Like, and I could say this, to go to a marketing agency and blow £15,000 on a website, right? Because I could go and grab an AI now and give it a rough description of the website that you need, and it would do a better job than that design agency have done. Marketing agencies often lack the skill to be creative because they can't pay their creatives enough because they've got maths. A design agency, like let's say a small 12-person boutique design agency, it will be quality over quantity. The vibes are what makes good work. Like designers or developers, I don't think they feed off money. They feed off like good culture and healthy working environments. What I would say is, if you're a small business and you need to make a website, just like Squarespace, there are 5, maybe 6 really well established platforms that you can go on.
And if you are one of those platforms, let's talk. My DMs are open, and I would be more than happy to shout you out.
Go on, and you can really just do your first stab at your first website and be to a good quality. And I think then, when that website has worn itself out, that's when you go to your agency, or if you're sensible with your money, you go and partner with a really, really good freelancer who can just deal with all of it for you. Because a really good freelancer, you'll be able to get like that product design aspect, you'll be able to get all of those skills all in one, and they'll have a network of like a really trusted developer and a really good PPC person.
I worked in big corpos, I work with a lot of people, but what I really miss is actually working with a smaller company and just actually having a massive impact in their job. So in a sense, my dream job right now is like I want to find a local, I don't know, someone who makes rubber soles and just do their whole websites and systems and everything, because I feel passionate and a lot of people are going to use it. It means nothing to me now going to another VC-backed company and like build another SaaS that actually leads nowhere.
That's kind of why I work on what I work on at the moment. It's because my product, like 13 million people use it a year. So, I mean, granted, 1.5 million of those people will go on Facebook and they'll just take a flamethrower to my work and go, "It's rubbish." There's a lot to be said for having some kind of meaning to your work versus being on the production line.
Mhm.
No one wants to be a worker. Everyone wants to be a contributor.
I mean, I can disagree with the definition actually, because you can be a worker and still make something, and you can be happy with it. For example, Clean was saying, "I just want tickets. Give me tickets, I'll do tickets." And I think there's a beauty in that as well. It's more about if your effort completely gets disregarded or discarded, or it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you don't care about the end user or the product, but you just care to justify that this company gave us $300 million and we need to make sure that our product seems like it's worth $300 million. That's the
Uh,
equation I really hate.
the greenwashing software, man. Don't get me started on that.
Jump cut. When I was working in my last role, they hired me because they needed an API gateway and they needed a technical program manager to manage everything and make sure it's on track, the dependencies, the risks, blah blah blah. So I
Yeah.
go in, I start reviewing everything. We find major issues, but I also find out that only 5% of our users, which was less than 1% of our revenue, actually used our APIs. So I told the CTO, and then they laid us off.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't have told him.
I completely fucked up, and it's terrible.
Well, you didn't fuck up.
No.
They fucked up. I mean, how many jobs have we all joined? You know, where it was false advertisement at the beginning. So often that happens. You know, how many jobs I've interviewed for? No, how many jobs I've interviewed people for? Right, where the job has been a lie.
Yeah.
A lot. Probably like 4 companies now. You know, one, right? I built a team of 3 people, right? And basically, by the time that I'd got the team together, they had already strategically planned to outsource my entire team to a UX company in Israel. I know, but it gets even funnier from that because the next company I moved on to, one of the guys I hired, he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Such a good designer and like got so much talent. He's just good at everything, you know. And we needed someone, and I just immediately thought of him, and I rang him. And I was like, "Do you want a job?" Like we didn't interview or anything. I was like, "Do you just want a job?" And he was like, "Yeah, right. I just want like this amount of money. Can I have a job?" Anyway, this guy worked me out of a job. Like 5 months later, there was no job for me left. He'd consumed my job. Completely kind of. I don't hate him for it. You know, sometimes you just get outclassed, like it happens. You know.
And to make it a bit positive again, do you ever completely zone off when developers are talking in meetings?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Is there a specific point, or is it just like the moment a dev opens the mouth, you're just like, I'm
I don't know. I mean, so it's kind of like it's the point where it's just kind of like, oh, can you go and get me the SQL query from so go and get me the SQL query from Snowflake, and then I need to know like what's going on with like line 32 of like the warning database linked into the other database that like flags off the feature flag for so and so, and I'm just there kind of like, guys, I can't believe you're wasting my time with this. Sorry to rein you in, but we're 52 minutes into the meeting. We've only just got through the introduction.
Do you like meetings?
No, I hate meetings. I like having meetings with people that I like. You know, like I think in every company, you know, you've got like a bit of an A team, you know, and they're that's like the team that you've got really good chemistry with, and you tend to work with that team all the time. But I like the meetings with those guys because they can get pretty unchained, you know, and that's when you have the most fun. But that's in isolation, and that's just for that team.
I don't necessarily hate meetings. I hate pointless meetings, and I also really hate meetings with those people that immediately go in very aggressively just to let you know that they really hate the meeting and they shouldn't have been in the meeting.
Oh, mate, a number of times I've been that guy.
Yeah, that's terrible. Like, you're discussing something, let's say dependencies between applications, and you have to have the engineering manager in there because obviously they're involved, they need to set the pace up for the team and everything. And they're just like, why am I even here? And then they completely hijack the meeting just to tell you how much they hate the meeting and it's stupid. And it's like, you literally ruined it for the 5 other people that came here to do something.
The problem is that the management job comes with no manual. Okay, and unfortunately, it's you only learn through like hard failure, and I mean hard failure, as in the kind of failure that you take home and you cry yourself to sleep at night. Grade. So, you know, but you know, I get it. Like I've done this before. Like I've shown it to a meeting. I'm like, why the hell am I invited to this meeting? You just sort it out yourself. Like, just make this go away. You just stop wasting my time. You know, and I think that's just one of those things where you just kind of have to you can teach someone skill, but you can't teach them wisdom.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have a dream job?
Yes.
Would you like to share with the classroom?
Well, my dream job would mostly involve you get to handle loads of cash, maybe precious metals like gold or platinum, and I could just hold it and organize it and stack it. Maybe polish it, move it around a bit, and just kind of cuddle it. Like Mr. Krabs, like almost loves money as much as I do. Like there's like this episode where basically SpongeBob finds this penny and he just puts it in his pocket without thinking anything of it. And Mr. Krabs spends 35 minutes trying to get this damn penny back of SpongeBob, right? To the point where he like breaks into his house into like a suit, in like a black suit, just kind of like tears the whole house apart looking for a penny. Yeah, probably I could become like a financial advisor or something like that, just something where I kind of like work with money. But I just kind of never really got the qualifications or whatever that I needed to do that. So, I think if you listen to most people, there's like an element of luck to like their story, where they just kind of flipped around and it kind of happened. And mine's no different. I didn't think I would be a product designer. I thought I would be a graphic designer, whatever that is.
So if you
Actually,
stick with design,
yeah.
would you still stay as a product designer, or would you be happy to switch disciplines or industries again?
Ideally, I'd like to stay as a product designer. If I'm honest, the culture is better. I'd only go back to agency if I really needed the money.
Mm-hmm.
So if I couldn't get a job and I just needed the money, I'd go back to agency. But I wouldn't stay there for long.
And I mean, I completely agree. I think agency was great when I was younger, and I just wanted to do shit, push limits, and then just go home, play video games, and that's it. But now in
Yeah,
my 30s, I don't know.
I need consistency, and I
Yeah.
need wholesome problems to solve, not like small objectives written on the back of a napkin that's going to just be recycled like a day later, right? So I need to be able to quantify and memorize, make some kind of memory or register what it is that I'm working on, if that makes sense. I'd love to be a car detailer though. Just saying,
Yeah.
I'd love to have kind of like my own unit, with the lights, and just kind of like do kind of like loads of kind of like really cool ceramic finishes and like Porsches and Ferrari, lots not a big fan of Japanese cars, so lots of Bavarian machines in there, big alloys.
I just want to do something actual engineering, mechanical engineering, electric engineering.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of done with software engineering. But yeah, like you said before, I don't have the qualifications for it. And because I'm conscious of the time as well, and thank you for being here. Anything you would like to plug and any closing statements?
Mostly I just wish that McDelivery delivered round here,
Mm.
but they don't. It's hard. It's really hard. Right. If you've got a landing page, right, that isn't performing very well, don't go to a marketing agency. It's a lie. Just give me a call. I will get that landing page performing for you or your money back. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. I hope
No
you
worries.
enjoy the time, and I would like to see you again.
All right. No worries. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, have a great night. Bye.
Thanks for having me, man. Take care. Bye.
Potato.